Who's this video for? I mean, let's be real. Most people are under the impression that there are black people in the Midwest. I mean, there's Detroit, but who's this for? I guess it's for people who genuinely grew up not knowing what it was like to belong somewhere, or never really felt like they were part of a larger group. I don't know. But what I do know is that my particular upbringing in the northern states was quite a bit strange, and I feel like there are people who grew up in the Midwest who will probably be able to relate to a lot of things I'm saying. Yes, some of it will be about how I was black there, but I mean, it was still weird regardless. But today, I'm gonna focus on what school was like growing up black in the Midwest in the early 2000s. Okay. I moved to Indiana in about the second grade. I went to Westlake Elementary School, and I cannot for the life of me tell you anything about that school, mainly because it was the second grade. The only thing I remember genuinely was getting on the computer in computer lab and going to Kidderant, RIP. But that's not important. What is important is the fact that after the second grade, I moved to a small town called Avon, Indiana. I don't know if you know where Avon, Indiana is, but it is a place so rural that you would call Comcast up to say, hey, I would like to pay you for cable and internet, and they would say, I'm sorry, that place is too rural even for us. We are not going to run cables out there because it would not be worth it. So yes, I moved to Avon in the third grade. The only thing I really remember about the third grade itself was the fact that that was the time we went to computer lab and we learned cursive, a skill that I do not use to this day. So thanks for that. Then there's the fourth grade with Mrs. Thomas. I say this with every piece of me into this statement, f*** Miss Thomas. F*** her and the Midwestern horse she rode in on. But that's a topic for another video. I promise I will get there eventually. What you do need to know is that this was the time we learned about the Civil War. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this as a black kid in a room full of white kids learning about slavery, but sometimes they turn to you like you're supposed to have a different opinion on it. Like, hey, Delapo, wow, slavery, right? And you'd be like, yeah, it was pretty f***ed up. I shouldn't have a different opinion on this. You probably should have the same opinion as I do. But anyways, yes, fourth grade. Whew. I don't remember my fifth grade teacher's name. I mean, that's what she gets for not making an impact on my life. This part of my life, I genuinely don't know what to think of. The fifth grade itself is one of those grades that just kind of comes and goes. You don't really think about it a lot. But this is also where I started band. You see, in Indiana, before you go into band, in the fourth grade, they have you fitted for a mouthpiece. That way, over the summer, you can go to band camp and you can be ready to play by the time fifth grade rolls around. At least that's how they did it there. Anyway, so I go to the fitting and I go and I want to play trumpet. That's the instrument that I wanted to play. So Mr. Draven hands me a trumpet mouthpiece. I blow into it and I can't really get a sound to come out of it. He looks at me and he says, I don't know about this. It seems like your lips might be a bit too big for this. Now, at the time, I was just like, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know. My lips are pretty juicy. What am I supposed to do with it? Okay, cool. So what about that one? That one has a bigger mouthpiece. That was the trombone. And so I picked up the trombone. And now the trombone itself is not the sexiest of instruments, I mean, but it still can bag you some ladies. So trombone players out there, you know what I'm talking about. But yes, I think back to that moment a lot because honestly, what was I thinking? There are plenty of great black trumpet players. Why did I think that that was okay for him to say? I don't know. You're young sometimes, you don't think about it. You don't even, like, something like that is so, like, passive that you don't even, like, bring it up to your parents or anything like that. Like, they're like, oh my gosh, Delop, I thought you wanted to play trumpet. And I was like, no, I'm just probably better suited for trombone. And that was it. Honestly, had I told them about the incident, they probably would have been like, what? That's ridiculous. But yeah, it happened. It's past. Let's move on. The 6th grade, I had my first male teacher, Mr. Branch. Honestly, I think that he was one of the most memorable teachers I've ever had in grade school. I freaking adored this guy. I don't know what it was about him. Maybe it was the fact that he was young and he hadn't become jaded by the teaching system yet. That was probably it. But yes, he was fantastic. He was energetic in everything that he did. He was funny as all else. It was just a great time to be in 6th grade. But 6th grade always comes with a caveat because that was the time they began sex ed. So let's talk about sex ed. Sex ed was very strange. And I think it's always going to be strange, especially when you live in a red state. You see, sex ed wasn't really so much sexual education as it was fear-mongering. But yeah, it ended up just being a conversation about how gross your crotch could look if you slept with the wrong person, and the only way to prevent any of that is to abstain from it until you're married. Now, this is not me bagging on abstinence. I think that abstinence is actually a pretty good thing when it's someone's choice and they are aware of the other options, if they so choose to, because it's all a matter of choice. But like I said, everything should be taught in conjunction with it. You should explain what safe sex is, because what ends up happening is if you don't talk to your kids honestly about what sex means, yeah, they'll end up talking to their friends about it, and their friends will give them some horrible, horrible advice. And now you're a grandmother at 35 and don't know how it happened. So, I'm only speaking from experience because I know of far too many young women and men who were in this situation, and because they were given the same sex talks that I was. Let's move on. 7th grade happened. I don't want to talk about that. 8th grade. At this point, I stopped having regular homeroom teachers. I guess this was to try and get us into that whole high school thing where we're switching from class to class. Yeah, 8th grade was weird. For some reason in 8th grade, I started getting into a lot of trouble. I'll definitely make a video about that later because I think it's worth talking about all the times that I got in trouble and all the suspensions I had. I was a weird kid going through a lot of weird stuff, and peer pressure is not great for anyone. So, another conversation you should have with your offspring, and I mean it. I started getting into sports. That was fun. I did track and field. Got shin splints. That was something I never want to experience again. No, track was great. I think that athletic outlets were great for me. And this was also a time where I started to congregate with a lot more black kids because, I guess, running? I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. I guess I should explain how this happened and how I ran into all the other black kids at the same time. You see, in Avon, the school structure went as this. In elementary school, there were like 4 elementary schools, each named after a tree, like pine tree, hickory, maple, whatever. And so, depending on your geographical location of your house, you would go to a certain school. Then, after the 4 elementary schools, you would go to one of 2 intermediate schools, being 5th and 6th grade. And it was weird there because they would always constantly remind you that you're still an elementary school kid, even though you're not in an elementary building. But whatever. Then, after that, you go to one of 2 middle schools. And then you would go to 1 high school. So as you got older, it kind of sort of like shrank closer and closer together, and so you were more likely to meet other people and things like that. And I actually had my first black classmate in the 6th grade, but I'll talk about Sarah later. Actually, super proud of her. 8th grade was also where I had my first real girlfriend. It ended badly. Freshman year might have been my best year of grade school. I actually really remember enjoying freshman year, and it was kind of because it was like this sort of like rewriting of things, like a fresh start almost, because half of the kids from middle school didn't know who you were because they didn't go to your middle school. They came from the other one, and so yeah. I actually switched off from band and I joined choir because it was easier. I didn't like carrying around a trombone on the bus. I don't know if you've ever seen a trombone case, but it doesn't make for the most fun of bus rides. Yeah, it was just really annoying. So I was like, I'm gonna switched to choir. I met a lot of awesome people in choir, people who didn't have the wherewithal to tell me not to join theater, because there's a lot of crossover there. And they'll tell you things like, maybe you should join drama. Drama's a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun, because if you think that being lumberjack number 3 is fun, I don't know what to tell you. Although I did have a line in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. What? Yeah. Huh. I was a pretty cool guy. But yes, freshman year was not that bad. I had a really weird thing in English class because I was like super hard crushing on my English teacher. Miss Blythe, I think it was. And yeah. But yeah, freshman year was pretty great. I would highly recommend it to anyone with stable mental capacity, I guess. And finally, 10th grade, my last year in Avon. We moved halfway through the year, which should actually be illegal because just as you're starting to establish real relationships with people, you know, and maybe you got yourself a serious girlfriend, or serious to you because you're in the 10th grade, your mom's like, hey, we're moving back to Florida. And yeah, you know, I haven't seen anyone in Florida in like 9 years, but yeah, sure, let's move back to Florida. Needless to say, it wasn't the greatest of transitions for me. I made a lot of really weird mistakes at the end of my time in Avon because I knew I was moving. And it was weird because we were moving like less than a week. So I was just like, oh, what? Yeah, it doesn't leave a lot of time to close things off on a good note. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Yes, today was about school and everything like that, but I really did want to talk about everything growing up. The types of friends that I had, the girlfriends that I had, that will probably be the next one. And yeah, it was just a strange time growing up there. Youth group was so much stranger up north. As anyone, I feel like anyone who's come from the north and then come to the south, even if you don't count Florida as the South, just gone anywhere else other than the Midwest, I feel like you'll experience a huge shift in culture and how they approach different things. But yeah, thank you so much again. And if you want to hear more of those stories, please subscribe and I'll be here to entertain you in your ears.